Imagine a cold winter morning in a tiny village in the Jura Mountains of France. Snow covers the rooftops, the air is sharp, and the streets are almost empty. A young boy named Louis Vuitton quietly steps out of his small wooden house. He's only 13 years old. His hands are trembling, not just from the cold, but from excitement. Louis doesn't have much. In fact, he has almost nothing. His father is a simple carpenter, and after his mother's death, the house has felt empty. He knows that if he stays in this village, his life will remain ordinary, maybe even miserable. But deep inside, there's a fire, a dream to build something bigger than anyone around him can imagine. He carries a small cloth bag on his back. Inside are a few pieces of bread, some clothes, and a set of wooden tools. That's it. No money, no map, no guarantee, only courage. As he walks away from his home, he looks back one last time. The mountains stand tall behind him, silent witnesses to the beginning of a journey that will change history. Louis starts walking toward Paris, the city of light, fashion, and opportunity. But Paris isn't close. It's over 400 kilometers away, and Louis has no transportation. He walks, sometimes for hours without stopping, sometimes sleeping in barns, sometimes under the stars. The road isn't easy. He faces hunger, harsh weather, and loneliness. Some nights he questions himself, am I crazy for leaving? But every time doubt appears, he imagines a better future, working with his hands, creating something beautiful, making a name for himself. That vision keeps him moving. Weeks pass. His shoes wear thin. His clothes become dirty and torn. But Louis refuses to stop. One evening, as the sun sets behind the hills, he finally sees the glow of Paris in the distance. Tears fill his eyes, not because he's weak, but because he's proud. He made it. A homeless boy with nothing but a dream has reached the city that could make him or break him. As he steps into the busy streets of Paris, the noise, the lights, the smell of bakeries, it's overwhelming. He's just a village boy in a massive, competitive city. But Louis isn't afraid. He whispers to himself, "This is where my real journey begins." The streets of Paris were alive with noise, smells, and movement. Louis Vuitton, a small boy from the Jura Mountains, felt both terrified and exhilarated. The city was vast, with carriages rattling down cobblestone streets, merchants shouting about their wares, and the aroma of fresh bread and roasted chestnuts drifting through the air. He had never seen anything like this. Every corner held a new surprise, a new danger, or a new opportunity. Louis had no place to stay, no money to rent a room, and no friends in this unfamiliar city. But he had something far more powerful: determination. He wandered the streets, observing artisans, craftsmen, and shopkeepers. He noticed how some men carved wood with precision, how others sewed leather with patience and care. Every sight sparked a fire within him. He wanted to learn it all, to master a craft that would one day carry his name across the world. One cold morning, as he was helping carry bundles for a leather merchant in exchange for a few coins, a kind-eyed craftsman noticed him. Monsieur Maréchal, a master trunk-maker, saw the boy's curious eyes and steady hands. "You have talent," he said softly. "If you work hard, I can teach you my craft." Louis couldn't believe his luck. Finally, someone saw potential in him. He nodded eagerly, and from that day on, he became an apprentice. The work was exhausting. Days started before sunrise and ended long after the city had gone quiet. Louis's hands blistered, his back ached, and sometimes he doubted whether he was strong enough. Yet each trunk he helped create taught him something new: about leather, about precision, about artistry, and most importantly, about patience. Monsieur Maréchal wasn't easy on him. "Mistakes will cost you," he would say. "If you rush, you'll fail, and failure has a price. Louis remembered his nights on the streets and the hunger he had faced. He couldn't afford to fail. Not now. Not ever. Slowly, Louis started creating his own designs in secret. Small sketches on scraps of paper, ideas for trunks that were lighter, stronger, and more elegant. He experimented with different leathers, locks, and shapes. Some failed, splitting seams, cracked leather, uneven corners, but each mistake taught him more than success ever could. During these years, Louis also learned to observe people. He noticed how the wealthy traveled, what they carried, and how they treated objects of value. A sturdy trunk wasn't just a box, it was a companion for journeys, a symbol of taste and status. Louis wanted his trunks to be more than functional. He wanted them to reflect elegance, durability, and individuality. It wasn't easy. Being a boy from a small village, a homeless child only a few years ago, he often felt out of place among the well-dressed clientele and the wealthy families who visited the shop. Sometimes they ignored him. Sometimes they sneered. But instead of discouraging him, it fueled his ambition. He wanted to create something that would make them stop, admire, and even envy. Years passed. Louis grew taller, stronger, and wiser. He learned every trick of the trade, every secret of the leather, every subtle touch that made a trunk perfect. And finally, the moment came when he felt ready to take the next step. He was no longer just an apprentice. He had become a craftsman with a vision. But starting his own workshop was another challenge. Paris was competitive, and the money he had saved was barely enough to rent a small space. Still, he believed in his dream. He found a tiny workshop near the bustling Rue du Faubourg Saint-Honoré. The walls were plain, the floor creaked, and there were no customers yet. But in his mind it was a palace, a place where his dreams would come to life. He crafted his first collection of trunks, each carefully designed, each detail meticulously considered. They were light enough to carry easily, strong enough to last decades, and beautiful enough to make anyone stop and admire. But the hardest part was yet to come, convincing people to believe in him. The first client to notice him was a wealthy traveler who admired the craftsmanship. "These trunks, they are remarkable," he said, running his hands over the leather. "Who made them?" Louis's heart raced. "I did," he said quietly, barely able to speak above the excitement in his chest. The traveler looked at him, then nodded. "I will take 2. It was a small order, but it changed everything. Word began to spread. People spoke of the young craftsman who made trunks that were both practical and elegant, sturdy yet refined. Soon, more clients came, each impressed by Louis's attention to detail and dedication to quality. But success was not instantaneous. Competitors laughed at a young man barely out of his teens daring to challenge established workshops. They spread rumors, tried to undermine him, and some even tried to steal his designs. Yet Louis persevered. He remembered the nights he spent walking through France, the hunger, the cold, and the loneliness. Those memories reminded him of the price of giving up. It was far too high. Through each struggle, Louis learned something vital. Innovation comes from hardship. Creativity thrives in adversity, and true craftsmanship is never rushed. He began introducing new types of trunks, stackable, lightweight, and with locks that were both functional and beautiful. Customers loved them. His reputation grew, and with it, his confidence. By now, Louis Vuitton was no longer just a boy from a village. He was a rising star in Paris, a young man whose name would soon become synonymous with excellence. But he never forgot the streets, the cold nights, and the dream that had driven him all these years. It was that dream, more than skill or luck, that carried him through every obstacle. And so, with determination, skill, and vision, Louis took the next big step. Opening his first official Louis Vuitton store, a place where travelers could find not just a trunk, but a symbol of elegance, reliability, and aspiration. But the story doesn't end here. There were still challenges, rivals, and innovations to conquer. The boy who once walked alone through the snowy streets of Jura had only just begun to leave his mark on the world. The year was 1854, and Paris had begun to recognize a new name in the world of craftsmanship: Louis Vuitton. The small boy who had once walked alone through snow-covered streets of Jura had grown into a young man with vision, skill, and ambition. But Louis knew that opening a workshop and making a few beautiful trunks was just the beginning. To leave a mark on history, he needed more than talent. He needed innovation, courage, and an unbreakable spirit. His first shop on Rue du Faubourg Saint-Honoré became a beacon for travelers. Every trunk that left the workshop carried a promise: elegance, durability, and craftsmanship like no other. Word spread quickly. Travelers from across Europe and even further afield sought Louis's creations. They didn't just want luggage, they wanted a piece of art, a companion for their journeys that reflected taste and refinement. But success brought challenges. Established workshops viewed the young craftsman as a threat. They mocked him for his age, his humble origins, and his ambition. Competitors tried to replicate his designs, steal his clients, and tarnish his reputation. Each attack could have broken him. Yet Louis remembered the nights he spent hungry and alone, the long walks through snowy villages, the hope that had carried him to Paris. Giving up was never an option. Instead of fearing rivals, Louis chose to innovate. He introduced the flat-topped trunk, a design that made stacking easier during long journeys on carriages and ships. He experimented with waterproof canvas to replace heavy leather, making trunks lighter and more durable. Every challenge pushed him to think creatively, to solve problems others had accepted as inevitable. His ingenuity became his signature, and soon it was his name that set him apart. Even as business grew, Louis never forgot the lessons of his past. He treated his apprentices with respect and patience, just as Monsieur Maréchal had treated him. He remembered the boy he had been, curious, hungry, determined, and he wanted to nurture that spark in others. Many of his young workers would go on to become master craftsmen, spreading his legacy even further. Travelers from distant lands began to visit Paris just to own a Louis Vuitton trunk. Some brought exotic requests, trunks with hidden compartments, custom fittings, or unique shapes. Louis welcomed each challenge, each order a chance to prove his skill and creativity. His workshop became a place where craftsmanship met imagination, where practicality met beauty. But perhaps the most extraordinary part of Louis's journey was the people he inspired. Children from villages like his own heard stories of a boy who had nothing and built everything. Apprentices who once doubted themselves watched him transform a simple workshop into a name recognized across continents. Louis Vuitton wasn't just a brand. It became a symbol of perseverance, vision, and the power of dreams. Over the decades, his work evolved, but the principles remained the same: quality above all, attention to detail, and innovation that serves both beauty and function. When Louis Vuitton passed away, his name was already synonymous with luxury, craftsmanship, and timeless elegance. The boy who had once wandered France with nothing but a dream had created a legacy that would outlast generations. And yet, the story is not merely about trunks, leather, or workshops. It is about a human spirit that refused to be defined by circumstance. It is about the courage to step into the unknown, the patience to master a craft, and the wisdom to turn hardship into opportunity. It is a reminder that dreams, no matter how improbable, can shape the world if one has the courage to pursue them relentlessly. Imagine now, in the streets of Paris, a young traveler looks into the shop window of Louis Vuitton. Inside, perfectly crafted trunks gleam under soft light. Each one tells a story: of a boy who walked alone, of a master who believed in him, of sleepless nights and endless effort. And in that moment, the traveler realizes that the most valuable thing a trunk can carry is not clothes or possessions. It is the story of resilience, creativity, and unyielding ambition. The world remembers Louis Vuitton not just for his designs, but for his journey. From the snow-covered villages of Jura to the heart of Paris, from hunger and despair to fame and admiration, his life is a testament to what is possible when talent meets tenacity. And so, every time a Louis Vuitton trunk leaves the workshop, it carries more than leather and canvas. It carries a story of a homeless boy with a dream so big, so audacious, that it changed the face of luxury forever. The end. If you enjoyed this story, please like, subscribe, and share this video. Comment below which story you want to hear next. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.